Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy SimplyFoodByTy, and today we are going to go back into the kitchen yet again, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to make my lemon blueberry scones. So let's jump into the kitchen and let's get to cooking so that you can have some scones for breakfast, okay?
Do I have your attention? 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 Do I have your attention?
Is you taking notes?
Okay, you guys, so let's go over our ingredients here. So we're going to be using 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 6 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then we're also going to be using a half a teaspoon of salt, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a cup of unsalted butter, which is honestly 1 full stick. Make sure that it is unsalted though. We're also going to use a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. We're going to use 1 large egg, 1.5 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, and then my secret ingredient is we're going to be using 3/4 of a teaspoon of cream cheese extract, and then we're going to use a 6-ounce container of fresh blueberries. So let's jump on into the video. So the best thing, honestly, about scones is that once you learn the basics of it, you can kind of add any and everything else that you would like with slight modifications. But this Bob's Red Mill unbleached all-purpose flour is the best bread for any type of bread baking. Trust me. So what we're adding in now is our 2 cups of our flour. We're also adding in our sugar. Next up, we're going to add in our baking soda, our salt, because that's always important when baking. Then you're going to add in the freshly chopped frozen cubes of butter. Now, you guys, this is extremely important. Do not skip this step. The best thing to do is to go on ahead and get your stick of butter, chop it up into really small cubes, and while you're doing everything else, just pop it in the freezer. Anytime you're making biscuits, when you're making breads, anything like that, you want to make sure that your butter is extremely cold. And as you can see, I'm only using the tips of my fingers to break up our butter. What you want it to do is to kind of almost turn into like a sand consistency. And what's going to happen is these little small pieces of butter that's going to be mixed throughout the dry ingredients, when the baking process begins, it's going to create little pockets in your scones, which is going to give it that nice, fluffy, light taste, which is what you want. Because let me tell you, scones are one of those type of things where if they're not made properly, baby, they will turn out dry and hard as a damn brick. And also the reason why I wanted you guys to see me doing this with my hands is to show you guys, look, I understand when I was in cooking school and when I was looking at people and looking at different recipes, I would always get intimidated by the fact that, oh, I don't have a standing mixer. Oh, I don't have a pastry knife, and I don't have all of these fancy utensils. You don't need any of that. Our great-grandparents didn't have none of that stuff. They used their hands for everything, and we can do the same thing. But the tip for this, to make sure that that butter stays nice and cold, only use the tips of your fingers. There's not that much heat in the tips of your finger, and that way you're not melting your butter down. If you use the palms of your hand, you're going to completely melt your butter, and then honestly, all of that hard work that you've done will have kind of been pointless. So this is slightly time consuming, but I promise you, this will make the biggest difference. So like I said, you know, when you're getting all of your stuff set up and, you know, getting your oven preheated and all of that, just chop up that butter, pop it in the freezer, and then that way, when it comes time for you to start adding your butter, you won't have to stress about your butter melting, because that really and truly is a very, very important step. So as you guys can see now, that butter is really, really breaking down. And in a few moments, I'm going to give you guys a close-up shot and you'll be able to see how it kind of becomes grainy, almost like sand. That butter, as you can see now, is just completely broken down into the flour, and that is exactly what we want. So make sure you pop that in the fridge while we work on our wet ingredients so that can stay nice and cold. So what we've just added was our heavy whipping cream. We're now also going to go ahead and add in that 1 large egg, or 2 small ones. We're adding in that special cream cheese flavoring extract, our vanilla extract, and then we're also going to be adding in that lemon juice, which gives it a little humph. Now, you're going to go ahead and whisk this. By all means, if you don't have a whisk, honey, you can do it with a fork. I will say, though, it is important to make sure that you're not over whisking this because you are working with heavy whipping cream. And if you do too much, it's going to turn into something completely different. It won't even look like eggs. So once you see the frothiness that comes to the top, go on ahead and stop, put it to the side. You're done with that. You don't have to whisk it, too much. Trust me. So that looks pretty good there. So what you're going to do now is just create yourself a little well in the center of your dry mixture. And then you're going to pour your wet mixture into your dry mixture. Now, this does not have, yeast and all of that in it, but trust me when I tell you, you do not need to be mixing this up too much. Don't feel like you need to knead this and all of that type of stuff. This isn't that type of bread. So you don't need to really overwork it too much. It's still going to seem like crumbs in the bowl. That is completely right. All you're doing is just putting in the liquid mixture to the dry mix just to make sure that it's kind of moistened slightly. Beyond that, that's it. You don't have to keep mixing it. You don't have to keep stirring it around. Because trust me, scones can easily be ruined by being mixed up way too much and kneaded and played around with. See how it still looks like it's kind of, completely broken apart and not together? That's actually what you want. This dough kind of comes together really quickly all on its own, so you don't have to do much. So we've just added in our 6 ounces of our blueberries. You want to make sure that you rinse those off, but make sure that you drain off any excess liquid because you don't want your bread to, have too much water in it. As you can see, we really didn't have to add that much. So once we've added that in, let's move that to the side. And now you're going to flour up your cutting board. You don't have to use that much, just enough. And then you're going to pour your mixture onto your cutting board. And as you guys can see, it is still completely falling apart. It's still kind of like sand. It's still kind of grainy, but you will witness in just a few moments how quickly this comes together. It does not take much. As you guys can see, just that quick, with just a few strokes of the hand, this dough has pretty much already come together. It does not take much, and that's really because of the fact that you're using a heavy whipping cream and that butter is already congealing everything together. So right now, I'm just trying to slightly make sure that I have all of my blueberries all mixed together. You want to make sure that you're not pressing down too hard on your dough. That way, your blueberries still kind of keep their shape and you're not completely, smashing up your blueberries. Because then what'll kind of happen is all of the liquid from your blueberries will drain out into the dough and it'll kind of turn them blue, which of course would still taste great, but you don't want that. So what we're working on now is just smashing it down so that you can get it to about the size of a dinner plate or just slightly larger than a dinner plate. And you want to make it into a nicely formed circle, because that's how you're going to get the best shape possible. And you'll also get pretty decent sized scones. You don't want them to be too thick, of course, and you also don't want them to be too thin. So I say, roughly about 1.5 inches thick. But if you put a plate on top of this, and if it slightly sticks out on the side, you've done just fine. So as you guys can see, that's the size that I want it. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut it straight down the middle to make sure that you get nice, clean slices. Dip it in water each time. And then we're going to go across the other way again, and then cut horizontally, and then the other way as well. So what you're going to actually end up having is, let's see, how many is this? You're going to have 8 scones all together. And as you can see, these are pretty decent sized scones. You're going to transfer it to a baking dish. Once again, if you don't have fancy silicone baking sheets, and if you don't have parchment paper, honey, get yourself some aluminum foil and put it on that damn pan and bake them scones. Don't let that type of stuff stress y'all out. If you ain't got aluminum foil, just put it right on the baking pan. Just make sure you spray it down. I put a little bit of butter on it. That just helps it, from sticking. And what you see me putting on the top right now is about, 1/4 of a cup of some heavy cream. You don't have to use all of that. That's just how much I pour into it. And I'm just brushing that on the top. That'll make it really nicely beautiful brown and have a little bit of crisp on it at the end. You're going to pop that in the oven at 350 degrees for roughly about 20 to 25 minutes. So the next thing we're going to be working on is our lemon glaze. Of course, these are lemon blueberry scones. So this will be the glaze that we're going to put on the top as soon as we take them out of the oven. So this is our confectioner sugar that we have right here. So what you want to do, and if you don't have a strainer, by all means, you absolutely do not have to use it. This is about 1 cup, I think I used, about 1 to about 1.5 cups. And I'm doing this just because I want to make sure that it's nice and fine. It'll give me a much smoother icing and I won't have to whisk it as much, which is kind of what we want. We don't want it to be overly complicated. And what I'm adding in right now is 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. That's it. You don't have to add any other liquid to it at all. If you add too much liquid to it, it will never thicken up and then it won't adhere to your scones, which is what you want. Now, you can taste this before you add it to your actual scones to see if it's sweet enough for you. If you don't think it's sweet enough, instead of adding more confectioner sugar, add yourself a 1/2 tablespoon of regular white granulated sugar. If you add too much of the powdered sugar, then you'll just have to keep adding more liquid, and it's not really going to bring the sweetness that you're trying to achieve. So if you don't think it's sweet enough for your liking, by all means, just add yourself some regular white sugar and just try to really whisk it in so that it will completely dissolve. Or if you would like, you can also just add some coarse sugar to your scones before you bake them. Just put it on the top right before you put them in the oven, and that's also, completely fine. So as you guys can see, our scones have come out of the oven. They are completely cooked. We transfer them to our serving dish. And now I have a little squirt bottle. It just makes it easier for me to put it on. By all means, use a fork, use a spoon, whatever you got. And just, put some swizzle on the top. You guys, that's it. You have just made yourselves some beautiful lemon blueberry scones from scratch. Look, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys tried this recipe. And as always, y'all babies stay cute and take care. Bye.
Simply Food by TY.